All right. Welcome to, let's see. Welcome to our 20th Lens session. Very excited to hit this. Um, Really excited to hit 20 episode because we have about, I don't know, 25 or 20, 25 or 30 more sessions to go. So super excited about that. Um, Thanks for joining us today. Today's guest is Kelly Custer. A little bit about Kelly. She's the founder and design director of Knack, an industrial design studio specializing in mobility products. Pairing her transportation design education from CCS, the College of Creative Studies in Detroit, Michigan. She has over 8 years of design consulting experience in consumer products. Kelly has built a strong passion for mobility. She founded Knack in 2014 and leads the studio to deliver irresistible, simple mobility products. Kelly has also been a Square One speaker in the past and has also been a financial donor to our organization. So we're very excited to have Kelly on here as she talks about marketing yourself to level up your design career. So, for those who are a part of the session, welcome. Thank you for being a part of it. I encourage you to ask questions in the Q&A. It's really hard for me to look at the chat, so please ask questions in the Q&A, and I'll do my best to integrate it in our conversation that we have with Kelly. So I'm going to hand things over to Kelly now, and then she'll take it from here.
All right. Hey, Hector. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
All
Welcome.
right. Cool. Thank you. And thanks for the introduction. I think I will just dive right in. Let's see if I can share my screen and get this going. All right. Can you see that?
You're good to go.
Okay. All right. So first of all, I should just say that props to you guys for being here because I know marketing is like this gross word that designers like to avoid like the plague, including myself. So we're already on our way to leveling up just by being here. So that's a good thing. Also, I want to say that when I do these things, I don't know why, but my face likes to turn beet red and I can't control it. So just go ahead and enjoy that along the way. So anyway, like Hector mentioned, I want to talk with you guys about marketing yourself, specifically as a designer, and why doing so can help you level up. And this goes for really designers across the board. So like, I'll get into what I do, but whether you're an independent designer or design firm, or you're an in-house designer, I think this strategy that I've put together, this marketing strategy, applies across the board. So I'm hoping that kind of all of us can get something out of this. Okay, so about me, my name is Kelly Custer. I'm the founder and design director of Knack. These are a few snippets from projects that we've worked on. And this is what we do. So we primarily focus on mobility products. And even more specifically, we strive to make irresistible products. So this is a picture from the Core 77 conference. I think it was about 2 years ago now. And you can see there's me being a dork in the front row. But I included this picture because this was like a really big turning point for me. So at this point, Knack was about 4 years old. And I'm sitting in the audience and there's a bunch of other design firms on stage. And a few of them were also about 4 years old, but they were light years ahead, I felt, of where Knack was. They were kind of like where we were shooting to be in 10 years, but they were already there in 4 years. So I just, from their presentations, I felt like they had better clients, they had better projects. And so from this point on, it just launched me into, it's been about a year and a half now, of just doing a deep dive into what they were doing differently to be in that position, but just also across the board. Like, what does it really take to be in that upper echelon of either design firm or kind of the cream of the crop in-house designer, right? So not to spoil the ending, but it all comes down to marketing. That's what I learned. And like I said, marketing was a gross word to me. So I fought really hard for that not to be the answer, but that was the answer. So this presentation I'm hoping to do is share with you guys all that I've learned in that year and a half. With that being said, I've sifted through so much information. There's no shortage of information out there about marketing, but the problem is it spans across so many industries, and it's not all of it's relevant to what we do. So I've tried to cut out all the unnecessary stuff and focus it precisely on us and what we need to do to level up. So quickly run through what I'm hoping to talk about. First, why should we even care about marketing? I touched on it a little bit, but we'll dive a little deeper into that. What even is marketing, right? Next, I want to touch on some big mistakes I see a majority of designers making. These also happen to be the same mistakes I was making. And then we'll talk about how to fix them and ultimately how that will help you level up. So you can already see my face turning red. Okay, anyway, so I have probably way too many slides, but I'm going to chug through them because I want to leave enough time at the end for a good Q&A. So like Hector said, hold on to your questions or type them in the chat, and then hopefully we can get through a bunch of those at the end. All right, so here's a snapshot of kind of the issue at hand, right? So there's you currently in the lower left corner, and then there's this disconnect between your dream you. So whether that be getting a promotion, landing a job at a top tier company, getting better projects, it's kind of like, you know where you need to go or where you want to go, but either you've been trying to get there and you're just like, why isn't it happening? Or you just don't know the steps to get there. That's what I'm hoping to break down. So in order to bridge that gap, you need to create more opportunities and create better opportunities. And I'm wondering if this is like very obvious to you guys. Maybe it is, but regardless, this is what it comes down to. And then this is, it's both obvious and a surprise I learned along the way with talking to designers, clients, people that have already leveled up. I found that in every single incident where someone's gotten a new big opportunity, or any opportunity really, every single time it comes down to a relationship. Okay, so whether it's someone you've worked with for 5 years and they know you super well and they recommend you to a new job position, or maybe you have a podcast, you've only talked to someone for 5 minutes, but they feel like they know you, and they introduce you and open up an opportunity for you. Every single time, these opportunities are bridged by a human, a relationship. So with that being said, in order to create more and better opportunities, you need to create more and better relationships. And then these little guys, I'll dive into this in a second, but these represent marketing. And marketing lays a foundation for these relationships. Okay, so what marketing allows you to do is it allows you to foster relationships you already have, create new ones, and then be offered those opportunities. So let's dive into the mistakes. Okay, so the first one is you don't know why you get hired. Okay. Now, when I say this, I don't mean position, right? It's like, oh, I got hired because they needed a senior industrial designer. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you don't know what results they're hoping you'll deliver or what transformation you'll help them make, or what you'll allow them to do that they couldn't do before. Really like the heart of why it is they hire you. So the reason why this is a mistake is because if you don't know the root, you know, issue or the root reason why you get hired, you end up letting the client or your future employer decide that for you. Okay. So I believe that this is what puts you in a trajectory you're unsatisfied with. It's like you don't quite know why you just keep not landing the jobs you want. You might be giving that client or that employer the reins to kind of pick and choose what it is that they think they can have you help with. Okay, the next big mistake I see is you're being lazy. Okay, so I don't mean in the design part of it, right? It's like we pull all-nighters, we bust our butts. We're definitely not lazy people. I'm talking about when it comes to marketing. Okay, so my guess here, because it's what the case was for me, we don't quite understand marketing, like what it even is or why we need it. And so we just err on the side of, oh, I don't need that. When it comes time to promoting your work or promoting yourself, a lot of times we just like, it's like, I'm burned out on actually doing the work. And it's that little 1% of energy that you just throw into like a lazy post saying, hey, I did this, or hey, I'm looking for a job. So I just think we're really lazy in our marketing efforts. And the reason why that's a problem is because we make it really hard for people to understand how we can help them, right? What we even do, how we can help them. And then another thing is like you did all the work, and that last little stretch of sharing it with the world, you skip over that part, and now you miss out on the chance of, getting credit for all that work and just doing that last little bit. And then the last mistake I see a lot is just no one knows you exist. Okay. So we think the whole world is watching us, right? When we're busting our butt and doing this awesome design work. But the reality is they don't unless you make them know you exist. And the problem with this is all your hard work ends up going unnoticed. So it's almost like it makes your effort and your time that you've put in a bit of a waste, So go ahead and read this real quick. Okay. My husband and I saw this meme. He's also a designer, and we were just cracking over this. And I thought it was a great example because this is how ridiculous we sound without proper marketing. All right. So now let's dive into what exactly marketing is. Kind of a pet peeve of mine and something I see a lot is that kind of people interchange marketing and advertising, and they're not the same thing. Okay, advertising is part of marketing. It's a little piece of marketing at the end, but marketing is a much bigger exercise or process, I should say. So this is a quote from Seth Godin. He says, "This is marketing done right. Marketing where the marketer changes the product, not the ads." Okay, so the best way I can explain marketing, hold on a sec, is marketing is how what you offer satisfies what your client or employer needs. Okay, so it's like that product market fit but in this case, we're saying you're the product. Um, to put it even simpler, it's being the solution to a problem. Okay. And marketing is the exercise of understanding what the problem is, what the solution should be, and this continuous iterative back and forth of improving, um, learning more about the problem and improving the solution. So with all that being said, I've come up with this three-phase marketing strategy, and the whole goal of this is to put yourself on that trajectory to better projects and better clients, right? Better opportunities. So the first phase is know your value. Once you know your value, you need to know how to communicate your value. And lastly, you need to make your value visible. Okay, so I'm going to break down each of those three and hopefully give you some real tangible examples so you know what the heck I'm talking about. Okay, so know your value. This means in order to know your value, you need to know what problem you're solving and for who. So who is your dream client or employer? And with each of these, I'm going to start with an example of how to do it wrong and then an example of how to do it right. So here's an example of how to do it wrong. That being said, this is a real screenshot I pulled from somewhere. I see this on a lot of people's sites, so it's not, hopefully I'm not picking on anybody here, but I'll read this real quick. It says, our clients range from startups to global brands that shape the world through products and services in almost every industry. Okay, so I want to give another example here. I had a good friend a couple weeks ago text me, and she said, "Hey Kelly, I'm looking for a new job. I'm wondering if you know of anyone hiring." And she's, I love her to death. She's an awesome worker. So I said, of course, hoping to help. I said, who are you looking to work for? Like, what type of job are you looking for? Trying to narrow it down. And she said, I'm looking for anything that pays more than minimum wage. Okay. And I understood where she was coming from, right? Because I would imagine she's thinking, I don't want to limit my opportunities. I don't want to rule anything out. But unfortunately, it had the complete opposite effect. Without saying who she could help, it basically gave me nothing to grab onto. It didn't jog my memory as to people I knew in different industries to reach out to. And I also didn't have anything to go searching for. So I think that's a great example of you have to know who it is you're helping. And that's really the first step to all of this. This is a great quote. It says, when you speak to everyone, you speak to no one. And the reason why I believe this to be true is because when you aim to serve everyone, what happens is you can't go deep enough to resonate with anyone in particular, right? So you're skimming the surface. Okay, here's an example of how to do it right. So this is Kiska, and to be honest, I would rather it be even more specific than this, but they've narrowed from all the companies they could design for. They focus in on power sport brands. So their tagline here is design for brands that dare. And like I touched on a second ago, it sounds counterintuitive, but actually by them being the specific, they've become the go-to design agency for power sport brands. So that's the first step. You have to identify who it is you're going to serve in order to begin to level up. So if you're a freelancer or a design firm, you got to ask yourself, what type of client do you want to target? And then if you're an in-house designer, what type of company or genre of products do you want to work for? Okay, so once you know who you want to help, the next is what problem are you going to solve for them? And this one sounds really simple. It's simple, but it is quite difficult. I'd also argue is probably the most important. All right, so here's an example of how to do it wrong. And unfortunately, this is our website from a few years ago. And the reason why this is wrong is because basically back then I didn't really know what the problem was, that root problem was that we solved for. And beyond that, even if I did know, we didn't know how to articulate it. So going back to that being lazy thing, it's like we showed the work, pray that the work speaks for itself. And the problem with that is what ends up happening is it makes the prospects, the potential clients, employers do all the work, right? They have to sift through seeing examples of what you can do and decide for themselves what A, what you do, B, how you could help them, okay? So this is what to do instead. And this, there's different forms of it. This gets referred to as a value proposition or your value prop statement. And I really like this. I keep seeing this a lot, and I think this is a great spot for your value proposition. Putting it as a subtitle in your LinkedIn profile. So I don't know this guy, but it jumped out at his prop jumped out at me. It says, "I help engineers get promoted without working weekends." Okay, so why this is good is because right up front he connects the dots for his audience. It's memorable, it's specific, and he's meaningfully different. So just with this, he's already got, I'm not an engineer, right? I don't, whatever, but I'm already thinking of people in my mind that are engineers that he might be able to help, okay? And this becomes super easy to share. It's like a little tagline. And I should note too, notice how he doesn't say everything. He doesn't say how he does this. He just says who he helps and what problem he solves. And by doing so, all you're trying to do is get them to click so they can learn more without them having to trudge through your entire, what's it called, your LinkedIn profile page to figure out what he could do for them. Okay, so the same concept applies in a job interview. I think the most powerful thing you could probably do going into your job hunt is knowing what problem that future boss is hoping to solve. So what that company is hoping you'll solve for them and what even just that person in particular is trying to solve. Okay, so the second phase to the marketing strategy is to then communicate your value. So now you know what your value is, but you have to know what to say and how to say it. So what should you say? All right, not this. Okay, and I know most of these examples, and I did it intentionally, are the way most people do it. And I think we kind of copy off of each other, right? Or it's, that's what I'm hoping with this presentation is eye-opener, so you know kind of the better way to do it here. So this, I like to call it like a laundry list of your methods, right? They've listed out all the different things they can do. The problem with it is it's speaking in design jargon and designer language, so you're speaking to other designers and not necessarily other prospects. So especially if someone isn't familiar with the design world or doesn't, even this, I don't know, I can't remember what company this is for, but there's terms on here that I don't know, right? And I am a designer. I guess a good quote that explains my point here is, and you guys have probably heard it a bunch, but people don't buy a drill bit, they want to buy a hole. And that's really what this page should be saying instead. Not the tools that you use, but the results that you deliver. Okay, so here's what you should replace that with. People want to hear about their problems and what you can do to make them go away. That's what we should be talking about. So think of yourself like a pill bottle. Some of them do it this really well, and some of them do it terribly. But what you want to do is put the problem you address and the relief you provide right on the front label. Okay. That's what's going to grab people's attention. They're going to say, oh, I have that problem. Oh, that's how I want to feel after I take this medicine. And better yet, this was actually a real product. I was shopping the other day for my husband who had a cold. And this was the only product that kind of promised a result. So they just outright state the benefit: shortens colds. So I don't really care. I don't care if this is like, what actual ingredients are in this or how it works. All I want is his cold to be shorter. So this made its case for itself. Okay, so now you know what to say. How should you say it? All right, I'm gonna get in trouble for this one. Okay, so don't say it like this. All right, and you guys probably know who this is. It's Astro, and I thought about this pretty hard because this saying gets used a lot. A lot of people use it, and obviously Astro is doing extremely well for themselves. The difference is big firms and companies like Astro, they've already leveled up, right? So they have the reputation and the relationships they need. If you're trying to level up and you're trying to get notice and to build traction, you can't get away with copy or messaging that's this generic. It tries to talk to everyone, and because nobody can argue with this, it ends up not resonating deeply with anyone. Okay, so here's an example of how to do it right. I'm really hoping you guys can hear this audio. All right, could you guys hear the back cracking? Hopefully that came through. So if this made you cringe, those noises, then you're not Chirp's target customer. If that noise made you satisfied and brought you this little creepy sense of joy, you are Chirp's target customer. So my point here is polarizing is good, okay? So the reason is because by excluding some people, you allow a deeper attraction for others. And then this is a tagline of Chirp's, back, poppin', or leave. And what I want to note here is this isn't like chiropractor language, right? This is written to resonate with the customers. So this resonates with me. Okay, I love cracking my back, and to have a product not only say they will pop your back, but almost promise it, that's really tempting for me, and that makes me really gravitate towards this product versus other ones. So when you're talking about your value, it's hard to do, but you need to get out of your perspective as a designer, and you need to speak your dream client or your dream employer's language, whoever that may be. Okay. So the last step is to make your value visible. And you do that by knowing how and where to show up. Okay, so quick story. About 5-7 years ago now, I rebuilt my motorcycle in my kitchen. It's a long story, but that was definitely a new thing for me. I'd never done that before, and it was a pretty big deal to me. So I knew from the get-go I wanted to share it, share the project, share what I learned. So I set up a time-lapse video. I made a blog post. I did a photo shoot, all this stuff. I even researched when the best time to publish the blog post is. And then I counted down the minutes and hit submit. Unfortunately, when I did that, it all came down to I had, I think, 3 people read the blog post. One of them, I think, was my coworker that was sitting right next to me. One was my mom, and the other one I think was me from another computer. So the point is, I see this a lot. I did it. I see it with like when someone posts or publishes a new Behance project, or you, excuse me, finally finish your updating your website. We like release it to the world and we hit publish, and we just think that the crowds are gonna just pour in. The reality is they don't, right? So it's not because nobody cared about my motorcycle project or that it was like a piece of junk. It was just that nobody knew I was even doing it. Like I didn't build up the hype around it, or I didn't even, give people a heads up and get their attention. So in order to, traffic's kind of a gross word, but in order to even get eyes on your work, you need to proactively build up an audience. So how to show up? First, you have to be seen, or I should say one way is to be seen. You can be seen a couple different ways, just simply by being different, right? Standing out. You can consistently show up. It's hard to ignore someone if they just keep on popping up. I think a great example of how to do this is to show up on LinkedIn or social media and share where you're at, like your career milestones. So I see people doing this. I think it works really well. If you're driving across the country and moving for a new job, share that. If you're looking for a job, share that in a engaging way. And what that does is it fills people in on where you're at currently, what you're doing, because I think often we just assume people are watching us and they know what's going on and what we do and how we can help them. And the reality is they don't. So we have to pop up, show up, and make sure that we get seen. Another way to show up is to explain. So explain your offer. This isn't convincing people that you can help them. It's just simply explaining what you do and how you can help them. So this is a pet peeve of mine. So it's whatever. I see this a lot. People say, check out blah, 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 right? Check out my new Behance page. Check out my new portfolio. Check it out, blah, blah. Also, I see like, hey, we're so honored. We just won the Red Dot Award for our flux capacitor. And honestly, that just makes me say, like, who cares, right? It's almost like it's lazy. It's a bit selfish. So instead of doing that, instead of just these real sloppy, quickly put together explanations, replace those with captivating stories that they do care to read. So whether it's educational or just simply entertaining, put some more thought into it and give them a reason to want to read it in the first place, because it really does go a long way. And the next way to show up is to educate, okay? So sometimes the person that you're trying to help doesn't realize they have a problem. Sometimes they just don't realize that or even how you could help them. So over time, develop your point of view and then consistently deliver educational material talking to that. So that could be blogging, speaking, something like this, writing a book, teaching. And something I want to note here is all of this. This is a very slow, thoughtful process, okay? So you have to adapt a farming, not a hunting mindset. Hopefully that makes sense. So the good news is, though, it's slow and steady, but it really leads to really sustainable results. And it's not like slimy, okay? Okay, and the next way is to help. And this is really the bedrock under all of this marketing strategy, or really anything that you do. So with every interaction, find a way to be helpful, okay? When you're writing your blog, or when you're making a post, or when you're having a conversation with someone, figure out how you can help them. And what this does is it'll hold their attention and build trust over time, and keep you from just, being spammy, really. It's a lot more valuable when you're showing up and helping people with everything that you do. Okay, and last one is to form relationships. People call them connections, and it just like really misses the mark. And I know make friends might seem a little too much, but you're really trying to build real relationships thoughtfully, one by one. And again, this takes time, but if you do it right and you really connect with people in a meaningful way, before you know it, you'll have a whole network that really supports you, and might lead to opportunities down the road. So where should you show up? I think as designers, we're guilty of showing up on whatever social media platform is popular. We're all guilty of, not maybe all, but most of us are guilty of chasing followers and likes. And I'm not saying that that's bad, but what's happening is I think it's important to realize you're promoting yourself to your peers when you're doing this. And again, that's okay, except we all have a limited amount of energy and time and effort that we can put towards this stuff. So you need to first focus that energy on dream clients and dream employers. And then, if you have stuff left over, by all means, promote to your peers. But I think we need to be aware of what it is we're actually doing. So instead, you should be hanging out where your dream clients hang out. So this is one place where my ideal clients hang out. I've learned through getting to know them more and more, they don't really hang out online. When they do, it's on Twitter or LinkedIn, not really on Instagram. So, and then above that, they mostly hang out in person at events like this. So this is where I need to be having those conversations and showing up. Like I said, they hang out on LinkedIn. So I've spent a lot more time on LinkedIn than on Instagram or Facebook. Instagram is a lot less sexy than, LinkedIn's a lot less sexy than Instagram, but it's filled with way more people that are relevant to Knack and our business. So a couple tips here is what I've done as I've been meeting people, having these conversations. I fill my feed with those people, okay? That way I engage with their content. I contribute to their community with content of my own. And it's just all around. It's a great way to be immersed in that area and build your expertise, but then also building these real relationships, and they see that you're showing up, okay? And then the last thing I'd say in this is keep showing up. It just says a lot when you're in it for the long haul, right? All right, so let's do a recap. To level up, you need to know your value, and you need to know your value so that you can pursue the right opportunities. You need to communicate your value. This way you resonate with the right opportunities. And the final step is make your value visible. And this way, the right opportunities know you exist. And then my final bit of advice is to just get started. It'll never be perfect. It'll never be done. And I know I've threw a lot of stuff at you and it's overwhelming. But just start at the beginning, start with one piece. Anything you do is going to be, ahead of where you were. And then just keep checking in with yourself and figuring out how you can tweak things and how to continuously improve. And that's it. So I'll turn it over to Hector.
All right. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Sure.
Yeah, if we can stop the screen share, I'll start to look at the questions and we'll kind of go from there. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yep.
So, like you mentioned in the beginning of your presentation, marketing is a very, I think as designers, when we get hired, we tend to um, just marketing has a bad rap, right?
Yeah.
And but I think in order to be a successful designer, you kind of have to be good at speaking different languages. That it's not just design. Marketing is one of those. So I'm really happy that you covered this. A lot of fantastic insights. Here's a question from Dom, and he's asking, after pivoting your site, have you noticed improvements such as a new influx of clients or better quality clients?
Yeah. So um, almost every single lead now that has come in, or potential clients, almost all of them have been vetted in the sense that they fit the niche now that we've branded Knack to have and focused Knack on. That being said, I'm not saying it was like overnight awesome results. It has been less leads, but because they're higher quality, I take that as a win. So yeah, it was really amazing to me how that just immediately transformed, because before we would get inquiries about any type of product, and now they're almost always mobility focused.
Absolutely, and I think you said it best that it's about kind of planting things and building those relationships. And obviously, I think a lot of this was easier to do prior to the COVID and pandemic situation that we're in,
Hmm.
because that also requires you as a person to be great at speaking to other people, at knowing how to communicate. Here's a question from Ryan, and he wants to know about your thoughts on relationship building during the pandemic, right? So
Hmm.
things are a little different. Obviously, before you can kind of grab coffee with someone and really build that relationship and see if you two are a good fit. What are some suggestions on how someone could do that now with the situation that we're in?
Yeah, I always like to just look at the bright side, right? And the nice thing is now is people have a lot more time.
Mhm.
Well, I think it's quickly changing, right, as people are getting back to work. But right now, people have extra time and they're more willing, and suddenly the whole world knows how to use Zoom. So it's really just reaching out to people and saying, um, why you're reaching out to them, what it is that you can offer to them, how you can help them, and just trying to get that conversation. Just make it quick. Don't take up a bunch of their time. Um, and it's really, I guess, the way I've connected is I've done Zooms, we've done stuff like this. This is awesome. It's like we can all pretend like we're in the same room, but we're getting this powerful way to connect that we didn't really do before, right? So it's just looking for what you're able to do now and what people are willing to do now that they weren't willing to do back when everything was normal.
Yeah, and I think right now is a really good opportunity for you to really market yourself online, because everyone is everyone is connected and everyone's glued to the internet. So if you market yourself very well, most likely you're going to be reached out and say, hey, looks like you're doing awesome stuff. I would like to get on a phone call with you and know more about you. And
Exactly.
I'm just talking from experiences with the things that we're doing with advanced design. There's a lot of people that have reached out just because they're curious on what we're doing and how we're doing it. And for me, that's kind of a win-win situation, because now that we moved on to an online platform, there are more eyes, right?
Definitely.
More people are trying to get information, and they want to be part of community. So definitely a huge win.
And I think to that point is, I know it's scary out there now and it's tempting to, like my friend did, like throw a really wide net. But now you have even more people out there all fighting for similar jobs, and everybody sounds the same. So like I would encourage you to resist the temptation to kind of water down what you do and your messaging and all that good stuff, and be specific, because that's the only way you're going to differentiate yourself and to stand out from everybody else saying the same thing.
Yeah, and I think that also is a little bit, I think the human part of it in us is that, with everything that's going on, people losing their jobs, it's really easy for us to, get anxious and say, okay, I just need a job now.
Right.
And if you don't step back, like you said, and just determine, okay, what can I bring to the table? You could be doing yourself a disservice, because everyone is in that mindset. Uh,
Exactly. And I'm not saying it's easy. It can be quite scary, but you could also look at it like it's less risky to put yourself out there like that than it is to kind of chill in the crowd with everyone else. And I think another reminder is, like, a lot of this comes down to, you know, tweaking how you talk about yourself or tweaking the tagline on your website. And if you mess up, so what? Like, it's a sentence on your website and you can change that. I wouldn't be afraid to experiment a little bit and to just not assume the world's going to come crashing down if you get it a little wrong.
yeah. Here's a question from Thomas, and he wants to know if you think universities could potentially help students learn how to market themselves. The reason being is that the most insightful video that he's seeing on marketing and design. So I think it's important do you think that schools should be teaching this? And that probably requires a whole nother lens session, but
Yeah.
on what schools should be teaching. But do you think that that's a good thing to do as a design department should be investing in teaching how to market?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And it will apply differently to different people, but just the very foundation of um, what it is we're trying to do, which is solve people's problems, like an employer's problems or a client's problems. And unfortunately, like, I just recently learned this, right? It's like I've had my business for going on 6 years and I had to self teach myself this. And it's embarrassing to look back and think, wow, I was completely clueless. It comes down to, like, you end up just kind of seeing what everybody else does and you take that as like industry standard. But definitely more so for the awareness, if schools taught this, just so you were aware of what it is was going on in people's minds and how you actually become relevant to them. And then you can build those skills with experience in the actual industry. But I think just having awareness of what's actually going on would be super helpful.
What if what if you're just shy and you're like, oh, I can't. I'm just not. I'm uncomfortable doing that.
Yeah. So when I started the whole, it's a long story, but basically I had made it a goal to do like 5 calls a week just to get to know people. There was no more agenda other than that, just calling people. And I had such anxiety about phone calls that I was literally throwing up every morning. Like, that's how uncomfortable it made me. Um, I I'm becoming less of an introvert thanks to this, but I guess my point here is you have to, like, burn through this section of practicing, and it's just not going to be comfortable. It sucks because it would be nice if you had just some little trick that you just figure out and then it would become easy. But the point is, just plan to be uncomfortable. Know you're going to make mistakes. Um, you literally have to make those mistakes in the beginning in order to get past it. And then the beautiful thing though is, like, I don't get anxiety now to make a call. Um, I still get a little nervous at like networking events or something. Um, but suddenly networking doesn't feel gross to me. I'm literally connecting with like-minded people and having good, interesting conversations, and I realized like there's nothing to be scared about. So it just comes down to practice and kind of giving yourself a break, just knowing that you're gonna be like a nervous mess for a little while and you'll get over it.
Absolutely. Here's a question from Haley, and they want to know, with COVID happening and not allowing for many social gatherings, how are you currently making connections, promoting yourself? Also,
Mm,
when things start back up, how do you find social gatherings or events where you can meet potential clients?
okay. So I guess it's like a three-parter there. So the way that um, we promote Knack. So we have a blog. I'm very active with engaging on LinkedIn and the social networks. Always trying to post helpful content in whatever form that comes in. Um, and then showing up to stuff like this, like just being seen and being present. Um, as far as with COVID, I guess something I do a lot because I'm always digesting podcasts and articles and other people's blogs. A lot of times someone just like really jumps out at me as being interesting or I have a question. So I'll just reach out to that person and say, hey, I really enjoyed your blog post. I'm just wondering, what do you think about this? Or something. So like the more that you consume as far as educational stuff, I think it just opens your horizons and then you start noticing other interesting people, and then I just simply reach out to those people. And then a good thing to do, which I made the mistake in the beginning, I didn't do this, but when you have these conversations, then at the end of them say, hey, is there anybody else that would be, um, could help me learn more about this or would be a good person to talk to? And you end up getting this chain of people that lead you in a direction and it just snowballs on itself. And then after COVID, I mean, before COVID hit, I had planned to go to a few micromobility conferences or a few mobility conferences, uh, speaking at a few of them, stuff like that. So it's just like these in-person normal networking things. Some of them have gone online now, but other ones, once this passes, we'll go back to that. But it all comes down to where your a future employer or clients are at. So it might be different for you. You know, you gotta first figure out where they hang out and kind of where they make waves, and that's where you have to, be an active member at.
Yeah, I think one thing that you do really well is you have this blog where you write articles about topics in design. And to me, and like you said, you listen to podcasts, you read other blogs, you read other articles, but to me, that extracurricular activity really it shows that you're actively engaged in conversation, and people get to, your articles, to some extent it shows your thought process about something. And I think that gives you a level up when potential clients are like, oh, Kelly wrote this, and then they look at your website and then they can kind of see like, Kelly would be an ideal, or Knack would be a good firm to hire because, you know um, they're not holding anything back. You guys have a lot of public things out there that
Yeah,
clients can pick up on. So that's great. I think that's a good way to do it. And it's very organic as well. And I really,
definitely.
you're not trying to push, yourself, like where then it becomes like an ad, and then
Right.
you're in everyone's face. Um,
Yeah.
Here's a question from Morgan. As a student, my aspired value is greater than my present experience. How does one find balance between those two positions when communicating with a potential employer?
You cut out there. I got the my value is higher than my
Mhm.
experience.
Mhm. Yeah, so how do you find balance between those two positions when you're communicating with a potential employer?
Okay, and correct me if I'm interpreting it wrong, but yeah, it's like I remember being so frustrated in college because like my tools or my hands couldn't do what my brain wanted to do, right? So yeah, when you have, I guess to more directly answer that, so you know your value, you don't have the experience. To be honest, what you just said about the blog is a great way to do it. So it's basically like, because ideally you would have, I guess best case scenario is you would have a case study, a real example with a real client of how you transformed them from their problem to their solution state. If you don't have that, you got to get creative. So writing, that basically allows people to get into your head and to understand how you think about problems, and they can see your value in that way. Another way is you can do, example projects. They're not as like personal projects. They're not as effective because it's not real, right? You don't have a client behind it. But anything you can do to illustrate and demonstrate your value with what you are able to do. So I would just backfill any sort of lack of experience with that.
Okay. So very well said. Here's a question from Derek. Ideally, clients come to you, but what does Knack do when they want to introduce themselves to a certain dream client? So let's say that you want to reach out to Google or one of, a really big company that could be a
Mhm.
client in so many ways. What do you do?
So there's a bunch of different advice on this, and I've tried a bunch of different things, but I've decided what it comes down to is it's almost like your dream clients are the slowest to obtain, because you don't want to hit them with a cold email and they say no and then you burn that, right?
Mhm.
So it's really building up all of the groundwork, which means, um, you know, following them on social media, engaging with their posts, adding something insightful, getting conversations with, people in that community. I every day at lunch I go for a walk and I make it a point to listen to like a mobility related podcast, and through that I've just absorbed their language, what they care about, what they don't care about, just getting super immersed in that. And then, like I touched on before, um, different people will pop up in that arena that I find interesting. I'll engage with them, and it comes down, it's not like you want to say, hey Google, like I can help you, because when you do that with no sort of foundation, they look at you and they don't see anything worth engaging with, or they don't see anything worth pursuing. But if you have this bedrock of, there's a bunch of people vouching for you, and you have all this content that's super relevant to what they do, and you've been diligent about, um, basically doing your homework, then suddenly you look a lot more interesting to them.
Mhm.
So that's what it is. Unfortunately, it's very slow,
Yeah.
but it's kind of first identifying who those dream clients are, and then getting into their world and becoming relevant enough for them to care, I guess would be how I summarize it.
And then after that, you show up to Apple Park, and then you're like, "Hey, Knack here."
That's right. And then they roll out the red carpet and
Sounds good. I'm gonna ask a couple more questions, and then we can kind of wrap this up. This question is asked by Dom. You share a lot of great resources on your own website blog. Do you find that builds confidence, awareness, in potential clients, or is the value more about design community engagement?
um so I think it's always easier and more tempting to speak to other designers, right? To like share stuff that resonates with the designers more so than clients. So I'm always actively trying to connect more with clients, just because it's harder to do. Um, but yeah, I guess it ends up being a little bit of both, um, but more so. just pushing myself to resonate with them. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and so the next question and our final question, I think you've answered it, but um, I just want to make sure that this makes sense. Should we promote ourselves as designers by showing our work, our public work on social media? Sometimes I find, it's scary to show ideas and not know, if it's going to be judged by a lot of people or it can be copied. And I think you did answer that in your presentation, because when you're showing your work publicly on Instagram, technically you're really sharing it with your friends in your inner circle and the
Hmm.
small, the small community that we're part of. But there's a handful of independent consultants like yourself that are out there, that you know you guys, yes, social media is good for drawing attention, but you also are a business, and at the end of the day, your goals are different than a goal of a student or someone who's already employed. Your goal
Right.
is to generate your own income, and you probably don't have the luxury to really worry about likes or follows, because you're trying to run a business here.
Yeah. And it's a trap you get stuck in.
Mhm.
Um, in the beginning, when I started Instagram, I didn't have a goal. Well, I guess I did. It was just simply to build personal skills. But then it quickly snowballed into like, how can I get the most likes? How can I get, what is it that people want to see? And basically ended up producing a bunch of eye candy. And if that's your goal, to get a bunch of followers and to see what it really takes to grab interest, then that's great. But you just have to be really honest about that. I realized after doing that for so long that that wasn't my goal. My goal was to promote our company and to potentially attract, future clients. And I realized that the companies I looked up to, they had like 6,000 followers, not 40,000 followers, right? They didn't care at all how many likes or followers they had, and they were a lot richer than I was, right? So it's it doesn't I'm not saying it's bad. One goal is better than the other. It's just be honest with yourself what it is you're trying to accomplish, and then keep checking in with yourself and saying, am I doing this for like an ego trip, or am I doing this to fulfill my original goal that I set out to do?
Absolutely. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for the amazing insights and for really destigmatizing, this area of marketing, because I think this can be very helpful, not just for designers who might want to take the independent consultant route, but this can be extremely helpful for anyone. Like you said in your, the title of your presentation, this can really level up your current situation. Whether you're looking for employment or you're looking for an internship, or if you're a student or an independent designer. Thank you
I
so
hope
much.
so.
I really appreciate your time and for giving back to our community. This video, has been recorded. We'll make it available on YouTube for those that missed it. And then for those who want to join us for after chat, for our after lens, where you can voice your opinions and really deep dive into this conversation that we had with Kelly, join us in about 10 minutes on our after lens session. So Kelly, have a good evening. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you guys. Thanks, Hector.
Take care.